What an unbelievable game. State of Origin 3, the decider, was absolutely unreal. One of the best State of Origin games I've ever seen. I mean, it could be the best that I can remember, and I have been watching State of Origin for a very long time. It just had absolutely everything, and it was unbelievable in the sense of how relentless the physicality was, and for so much of the game. I just remember the first half on the edge of my seat the whole time. It could, anything could happen, anything could open up. A fight. I mean, we did have a good scrap, a good old-fashioned traditional State of Origin scrap in the sideline, in amongst cameras and monitors and players in suits and all sorts of things. I won't talk about much of that sort of stuff, but it just had absolutely everything. And for a scoreline of 2-0 at half-time, let's be fair. I mean, we want to see tries, we want to see points, but I wouldn't have changed that for anything. You watch other sports or whatever, and there's no scores, and you think, it can be pretty boring. Even some games of rugby league, to be fair, but that was just amazing. The fast pace, intense physicality of that of certainly the first half, but most of the game. I mean, for 60 plus minutes, it was absolutely anyone's game. And the difference in the end was just a couple of missed tackles, really. And that was it. Queensland completely turned things around from game two. I mean, we had very one-sided game one, very one-sided game two. But Queensland completely turned around, as it was reasonably predicted. But what a team effort that, Queensland put in. Unbelievable. Of course, there was a good scrap, and there'll be a couple of players suspended because of that. So it just had everything. It just gave you a taste of what State of Origin used to be when it was good. I do have a half a thought on that one. I mean, in the last few years, the refereeing and the judiciary and all they've been really cracking down on head contact and scrapping, because we're setting an example, or the players are setting an example and all of that. But I just felt like the players were able just to, not get away with more, but just play and just do their thing, and they sorted out themselves. Let's put it that way. And then, another key moment, Zach Lomax kicking a penalty from the sideline. I mean, that's how close it was. But to take that risk, I thought it was a crazy idea, but he absolutely nailed it. I mean, what confidence he's playing with, let's be honest. The DCE ankle tap, I know that was talked about a little bit, and that was a try saver. However, he sort of had let Best get into that situational position, but 35-year-old chasing down a young fella like that. The Luai break and the Bradman Best try. The only comment I want to make about that is there was a couple of offloads before Luai did make his break, and you think, it was 60-something in the 60-somethingth minute, but the ball was offloaded, juggled, but Connor Watson, and then the ball went to ground from Connor Watson, but there was no Queenslander to pounce, and any time before that, Queensland, either side would have just sort of pounced on that scenario to sort of shut it down, but just gave the Blues just that little bit of space, and they took it. And Luai, I mean, that was sort of pretty much the game-breaking moment, wasn't it? And of course, Zach Lomax kicking the conversion from the sideline. Latrell Mitchell missing. I mean, I think Best totally filled that gap comfortably. And I don't know, every Blues player this series has pretty much made it so much more difficult to pick the team next year. And just the defence by both teams was absolutely exceptional. A few stats from the game. You would have seen most of these anyway, but 56% possession to the Blues, or to New South Wales. Just that, I mean, that was enough to know that they were a dominating team. Post-contact meters, another example of the Blues domination, a whopping 581 post-contact meters compared to 411 for Queensland. And, that comes down to forward size. The Blues absolutely outmuscled Queensland, and for the most part, and the bench sort of backs that up, right? The kick return meters, 306 in New South Wales to only 141 to Queensland. New South Wales twice as many offloads, that probably, offloads and probably tackle breaks and line breaks, whatever. But the Queensland defence was so solid that New South Wales didn't really capitalise from those dummy passes. Queensland did. Just as a random stat that I picked up, but 67 dummies the Queenslanders did to 18 that New South Wales did. I think there was one dummy that Queensland that worked for Queensland with Tom Dearden made that line break, but they just weren't able to convert that into a try. The Queenslanders had greater kicking metres, 741 to 667. I felt like Mitchell Moses. I thought New South Wales would have had the better kicking metres because they had the better territory. And however, the difference was those kick return metres. Of course, Queensland kicking further, but New South Wales making a difference with their returns. Queensland made 100 more tackles, and that was telling later in the game, of course. 423 tackles to 323. It was about 100 more tackles. New South Wales made twice as many errors, 13 to 7, and maybe that's what kept Queensland in the game. A little bit of a player, or not a player review, just a few thoughts on 5 players from each team. I'll give you my top 5. At fifth, for Queensland, let's start with them. I had Reece Walsh. He played well. He was shut down. I think New South Wales contained him pretty well. He's always a threat, but they definitely didn't give him much space. The other point I'd make to Reece Walsh's credit was he looked like he was really battling with a couple of niggles there, but he played through. DCE, I had DCE at fourth. I think he was a key player for Queensland. He didn't quite have the dominance that, say, he's had before, either at Suncorp or even at Game 1 in Sydney, although we know that game was hardly a contest. But yeah, and he got caught up with the niggle. I know that New South Wales were really targeting him, winding him up. But DCE's defence was far greater than the week before, and he was able to contain Angus Crichton very well. Ruben Cotter I had at 3. He was out of position to start the game. He had an exceptional high work rate. He didn't quite get that go forward. I mean, he is a small middle forward, but he played big minutes and was one of Queensland's best. He just got through a ton of work. I had Tom Dearden at number 2. I think that was reasonably fair because of his vast improvement in defence. And it wasn't necessarily all his fault, of course, in Game 2, but he made a big turnaround and really shut down the likes of Liam Martin, amongst others. I think there was a couple of try savers, probably. Certainly that tackle he put on Stephen Crichton to drop the ball just before the line, and another one on, I don't know who he hit, but he stopped someone dead when they were charging a few metres out from the line. And he made that line break. He looked like the only player for Queensland to really threaten the New South Wales line. And then, of course, easily number 1, Patrick Carrigan. He led the tackle count at 58. He ran for 164 metres, so he had the most run metres for Queensland. He played 80 minutes, but his performance was just class, wasn't it? I mean, he was the main Queensland forward going forward. He was the main Queensland forward making aggressive and dominant tackles. He had an all-time performance for Queensland, and for me, just missed out on sort of man of the match type of performance. Like it was almost a match-winning performance. Plenty of, from a Queensland point of view, there was plenty of changes before kickoff. Cotter went to the edge, Hunt, Collins and Nanai went to the bench. And that probably, I don't know, it might have been planned, but I felt like it was a little bit unsettling. But certainly Queensland started unbelievably and to begin with in that physicality. I just honestly, when I first started watching those first few minutes, I thought, oh shoot, this is I don't know if the Blues can keep up with this, but clearly they did, but they just matched. It was just an extremely tight contest. In terms of Collins, I felt like he probably should have started, and in hindsight I probably would have started Collins and Fotuaika. But you want to balance them out. I know that the bench is pretty light for Queensland in terms of middle forwards. You had a hooker reserve when Ben Hunt after the changes to the starting lineup. You had Ben Hunt and Kalen Ponga. So I think that needs to change. That's where I think the Blues won the game. If you ask me, that was a big difference. So anyway, and Collins didn't have the impact that he kind of needed to make because he didn't start. So I've sort of covered the size, but in terms of Queensland, their heart was just awesome. Their defence was amazing, and we'd seen that sort of level of defence before from Queensland, where they're on their line and they're just defending, shutting New South Wales down. New South Wales in that first half, I just thought, man, they're never going to be able to score any points. So their defence was great, and then we've seen that before. Here we go again. Queensland's going to defend, shut New South Wales down, and then it's just going to open up, and Tabuai Fido or Reece Walsh or someone will make a break, and then they'll put a few tries on in the blink of an eye. But no, those key men, Tabuai Fido, Reece Walsh, they were at Valentine Holmes, just shut down. So that was a telling scenario. New South Wales, I have a top 5, but I must admit, for 5th place, it's awfully challenging. I thought that so many of the Blues players played really well. So Bradman Best, Angus Crichton, Stephen Crichton too for that matter, but Angus Crichton, Liam Martin, Reece Robson, Mitchell Barnett and Jerome Luai were kind of all in that sort of category of playing really well and amongst the top 10 players. But you obviously can't name everyone, but they all were exceptional in their own right. But Best, he would have probably gone further up the list for me if he didn't drop it a couple of times in that first half. But certainly that try was an absolute game breaker. Not many players could do that. But man, he knows what to do when he gets in a little bit of space like that. So look, number 4, I had Isaiah Yeo. I think he was just a cut above Angus Crichton, Liam Martin and Mitchell Barnett. He played 60 minutes coming from the bench. He was the on-field captain for the majority of the game, certainly in some key moments and very challenging moments to try and keep people's heads together. He always went forward. He always took it on when there was a gap and there was no one else to put their hand up. So he was just immense, if you ask me. Mitchell Moses I had at 3. His kicking, the New South Wales dominated territory, and that in a large part was him. He pretty much kicked every set, apart from a few other kicks that Luai put in, which was a really good offset. He scored a great try as well, just to break the line when the forwards were getting tired, or he saw an opportunity and took it in a key clutch moment. And to be fair now, and I never thought I'd say this, but Nathan Cleary has a bit of challenge there to sort of come back into the team. We'll see how the rest of Cleary's season goes this year. At number 2, I had Payne Haas. He was just massive for the Blues. He's got an incredible engine. I know that Patrick Harrigan probably outmatched all the forwards on the field, but Payne Haas didn't get the opportunity to play as many minutes. But it was a great matchup with Payne Haas and Patrick Harrigan. But Payne, he made good meters all the time. A couple of offloads. He was tackling everything. But man, he for such a young guy, he plays well beyond his years in terms of like experience, or a wise old head, as they say. Seriously, just keeping us cool and just those key moments when there's a lot of pressure on. At number 1, Dylan Edwards, I do agree with the Man of the Match award. For me anyway, 243 metres, so he blitzed or beat everyone in terms of running metres, and of course, Patrick Carrigan was 164 for to lead Queensland, and Dylan Edwards is 243. He was the first receiver a lot of the time, often taking the ball up to give the big men a rest, and when you're taking that straight off the ruck, to be that sort of first receiver, you're running it at the biggest men on the field. But he would always gain meters, and that's where those post-contact meters came into it. That's where those kick return meters came into it. He was seriously a cut above everyone else, in my opinion, saving tries. But yeah, just the most influential player in the game as well. But yeah, look, one of the best Blues performances I've ever seen. I think that, it was 2005 since the Blues had last won at Suncorp in a decider, and you had the likes of Andrew Johns and all the rest of it. So, I mean, you're talking a team, 20 years in the sort of a 20-year scenario, we might not see such a performance for a while. And to do what they achieved, that's only happened a few times in history. I felt personally that all the Blues players pretty much got the better of all of the Queensland counterparts. That was my take. I know it was an extremely close game, but I still just felt every one of the Blues players played slightly better than every one of the Queensland players in the opposite position. However, Patrick Carrigan was probably that standout for Queensland. It was just, from a New South Wales point of view, it was just such an absolutely uncompromising, physical and effort, and they won the war of attrition to sort of just grind Queensland down. And then there was two opportunities, they took them. There could have been a couple more tries, but Queensland managed to rally and sort of save a couple of tries. But overall, for me, I felt the New South Wales team were the better team and deserved to win. And there's lots of other little details with refereeing decisions and all the rest of it, but I'll leave that. I felt New South Wales were the better team on the night, and they had to be. They had to be basically perfect in order to win that game. So that's it from me. Let me know if you have any other thoughts. I'm still excited about it. I'm still buzzing. I watched the game, or the highlights, just before I made this video as well, and I just still sort of can't believe it. One of the best rugby league games, one of the best sporting sort of events that I've witnessed for a long time. So I'll probably watch it again. It was just so awesome. Anyway, let me know what you think. If you have watched this, thank you so much, and I'll make another rugby league video either tomorrow or next week. Thanks.